There are villains, and then there are nightmares. Threats so overwhelming that even the strongest heroes barely stand a chance. But who's the most powerful villain in all of the DC universe? We're going to answer that question across this 4-part series. And these villains, they're not just getting ranked, they're getting spanked. What does that mean? Well, some of these villains have been humiliated. Some took catastrophic losses, but others have never been defeated at all. So today we're going to kick off part 1. We're going to cover number 20 through number 16, the bottom 5 on the list of the most powerful DC villains based on a weighted average of power, evilness, coolness, and the spank factor, which is basically just how embarrassing was their most embarrassing defeat. Because no matter how powerful these villains are, some of them took some pretty bad losses. Then again, others remain totally unstoppable. And believe it or not, some of the most powerful DC bad guys are pretty lame. So at number 20, the bottom feeder of the powerful villains that we're going to be talking about, we have an all-powerful, godlike trickster who can rewrite reality with a snap of his fingers. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Yes, you probably know. This guy, he's a super powerful guy. So what's he doing down here? He's up there. He's at the top in terms of just straight up power. So what's he doing at number 20? How did this happen? What am I thinking? And I'll tell you, I weighted power very heavily. So you're a powerful guy. That ought to be enough to get you to the top. It's 50% of the score, then 30% for evilness, 10% for coolness, and then 10% for that spank factor, which is just, again, how easy and embarrassingly they got beat. Every other villain in this list would be in the same spot they are now based on power alone. The other factors are basically just tiebreakers. But this little imp is so lame that even with a perfect 10 in power, here he sits, all the way at the bottom. It shouldn't be this way. He's a 5th dimensional imp. He exists beyond time and space. We can't even conceive of his power. He's completely invincible, completely untouchable. And the only reason the DC universe hasn't been turned into a giant whoopee cushion is because he has one fatal flaw. He's an idiot. All you have to do is get him to say his name backwards or forwards, whatever, and off he goes, back to the 5th dimension or wherever he calls home.
I got a large double half-calf non-fat mocha with soy for Cliplet Sam?
That's Cliplet Sam! Oh, no, wait!
That alone, I mean, that really doesn't seem like that bad of a weakness, you know? If you wanna try that on me, I don't think that you would ever get rid of me. But this guy, it's the easiest thing in the world to do. It's like Superman is Bugs Bunny and he's Elmer Fudd. Maybe one day some crazy writer will decide to give him a brain cell or two and the DC universe will come to an end. Until then, let's just move on. Because up next is the monster that puts Superman out of commission. You know who I'm talking about. Number 19, Doomsday. Another pea-brained villain, but this one is much more of a physical threat. He is an evolutionary nightmare. Every time he dies, he adapts to his cause of death and becomes immune to it, at least to the degree that he experienced it. So he's almost literally unkillable. Even Darkseid, a villain who wipes out planets like it's his job, which I guess it kind of is. He tried to get him with those Omega beams. Didn't work. Only the Radiant, Superman, and Imperiex have managed to take him out. But his most embarrassing loss wasn't some epic fight or some universe-shattering battle. No. Superman tricked him into a series of teleporters and just bounced him around for eternity. He didn't even get killed. He just got thrown into a time warp and left there. Now, Doomsday was a force of nature, a beast that evolved beyond death itself. But what if evolution wasn't random? What if it was calculated? Number 18, we've got Brainiac 13, the villain who upgraded himself beyond reality. Obviously, Brainiac alone is a problem, but Brainiac 13, that's a whole new nightmare.
Now's my chance. I need to hit Brainiac with heat vision while he's still recovering.
That's a version of Brainiac who comes from the 64th century, where he evolved beyond anything we can comprehend. And he doesn't just steal civilizations, he rewrites the entire structure of reality so that he's in control. So he takes over Metropolis in seconds, the entire planet not long after that, before Superman even knew what was happening. And unlike other versions of Brainiac, he wasn't just after information. He wasn't just looking for some people he could put in jars. He wanted total dominance. Unfortunately for him, he outsmarted himself. His biggest mistake was thinking he could manipulate Lex Luthor. Lex is a lot of things, but if there's one thing he refuses to be, it's somebody else's pawn. So when Brainiac 13 offered him godlike technology in exchange for a partnership, Luthor did what Luthor does best. He played the long game. He tricked Brainiac into a paradox and manipulated events so that the original Brainiac, Brainiac 2.5 and Brainiac 13, were all forced into a time loop, and each one of them canceled out the others. The ultimate checkmate. Brainiac 13 was the most advanced intelligence in the known universe. But in the end, he played himself. He thought intelligence was the key to power, but I guess he got out intelligenced. But what if pure intelligence isn't the greatest weapon at all? What if the real key to power is fear? And, if we're talking about fear, number 17, we got to be talking about Sinestro, but not just any version. I'm talking about a version that combined a mind of pure terror with one of the most brilliant strategists in the universe. Sinestro was already one of the most dangerous beings in the cosmos. He didn't just wield a power ring, he mastered it and bent it to his will in ways even the guardians of the universe feared. And then he bonded with Parallax, the ancient entity of fear. Unlike Hal Jordan's time as Parallax, where Hal was overwhelmed by the entity's influence, Sinestro knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't get taken over, he took control. And that is what made him so terrifying. With Parallax's power, he could manipulate fear on a cosmic scale, spreading terror across entire star systems. Sinestro with Parallax wasn't just a physical threat, he was a psychological nightmare. He could infect his enemies with doubt, make them question their every move. Even the strongest warriors fell apart before they even had a chance to fight him. But for all that power, his greatest weakness was himself. And isn't that so often the case? His arrogance, his obsession with control ultimately made him vulnerable. So just through sheer force of will, he had Parallax stripped away from him. No more godlike power, and basically just ended up being another soldier in the war, which is not really his thing. So one minute he's the god of fear, the next he's back to square one. But at least he got to keep his dignity. The next villain got humiliated in a way that would make Sinestro sick. Number 16, a guy you might not have heard of, Mordru. Parallax thrived on fear. He used it as a weapon, a tool to break the strongest minds in the universe. But for all the terror he spread, he was still a force that needed to be wielded or needed to possess somebody, generally possession. But the next villain, he didn't need to wield fear. He was above fear for the most part. He was a master of magic, so powerful that he could bend reality, crush entire worlds, and challenge gods themselves. Mordru wasn't just another sorcerer. He was a lord of chaos. He ruled galaxies, survived the end of time itself. For all intents and purposes, he was unstoppable, or at least that's what he wanted people to think. Because for all his power and cosmic domination, he got beaten by words, kind of like a little imp we know. When the Legion of Superheroes faced him, they knew they didn't have any chance of stopping him with brute force. So they did something smarter. They bluffed. They told him they had a hidden, unstoppable magic force backing them, one so powerful it would destroy him in an instant. And do you know what this god tier, galaxy conquering sorcerer did? He ran. He didn't fight. He didn't test their strength. He didn't even try to confirm if they were telling the truth. He just panicked, ran away like a terrified child. This guy who fought Dr. Fate, who ruled entire empires, lost because somebody bluffed him. Really, your only power you need to beat this guy is apparently being good at poker. And speaking of villains who let their emotions destroy them, the next one, the guy we got coming up, he had everything: power, control, a godlike status, and he threw it all away just because he couldn't handle being second place. But that wraps up part 1 of our 4-part ranking of DC's most powerful villains. We've covered some of the biggest failures, the villains who should have been unstoppable but instead got stopped, wrecked, clowned, completely outplayed, and we're just getting started. Next time, we're stepping up to the real threats. We're talking villains who nearly won, who didn't just challenge heroes, they broke them. Villains like Eclipso, who once turned the Spectre into his personal attack dog. And one villain who nearly rewrote the entire DC timeline. So make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because part 2 is where things start to get dangerous.